So, Monica, um, can you just begin by telling us about how you came to work at Toyota and your experience of personal and career development there from beginning to being a leader?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Fortune, and thank you, Philippe, for a lovely introduction. So, just for everybody on the call, I'm Monika Walker. So, I am a former Toyota employee and I spent 14 years with Toyota. Since mid of last year, I've transitioned into construction industry, so it's a very different career move for me. And the examples that we'll be discussing today, it's really relevant to the service sector, to the tech sector, and we've had some very interesting discussions with Fortune and Philippe prior to the call starting. It's how transferable the skills that we do have really across the industry. So it's something that's I'm passionate about and really interested in. So I joined Toyota in my early career. I actually joined Toyota as a graduate on a graduate scheme. And I always seen Toyota as a world-class organization. I studied international business, and as for many of us, Toyota has always been an example that you study and research and reference. So to be able to secure a graduate placement with the world-class organization was by no means feat, and it was a really, really happy, a special day. And during the 14 years, I've gone through very intense training. So I've completed my graduate program. I progressed through supply chain, supplier development, procurement, logistics, projects, business transformation programs. So I've had an opportunity to work across different divisions, different departments with people in different areas of the business as well. So I've had a real first experience to see how the leadership works and how the training that I did really supported that leadership progression. So I progressed from graduate to management position and also enabled by the excellent training, but also by some of the projects and the skills that we developed as part of the on-the-job activities. So as Fortune said, I'm now managing a construction and property company, a growing company in the East Midlands, and within SME. But I'm also supporting with some of the advisory and mentoring roles as part of my skills and knowledge developed over the last 14 years. And what really is interesting in terms of my development, I think what Toyota enabled me to learn and what I brought the most in terms to my new role is the system thinking. It's how we translate it into everything else that we can do. And how that system thinking enables the leadership design, the problem solving skills. And as part of my development, there's three things that really stayed with me. I think the standards create the stability, which creates then capacity. The problems are not problems that we should be hiding. Those are information that we should be using to enable continuous improvement and Kaizen. And the respect for people, it's a given. It's an operational behavior that's really at the foundation of everything that the organization, lean organization does. So what I've learned in the last 14 years and what I've taken to my new role is how those systems really allow us to design the best flow that allow the workflow, but also to improve the work and for people to enjoy the work as much as possible. By no means everything's perfect in a workplace, and every workplace has the improvements, and that's why it's the continuous improvement and Kaizen that's so important.
Great, Monica. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. Uh, uh, our goal today really is to talk about this one particular leadership aspect that's really unique to Toyota, and that is the key team leader role, which is always described as essential to the Toyota process and Toyota way of working, as well as the philosophy. So, could you just spend a moment familiarizing our audience with your view of that role?
Absolutely. And that's a perfect start as we dive deeper into some of the pushing points as we go forward. And I think when talking about the team leader role, and I'd like to think people on a call and maybe heard about the team leader role and studied it, etc. But I think I'd like to always start with the foundation of where the TPS and the lean design is and what the structure is. So I think before diving deeper into that role, is that structure is there to prevent the problems and to increase the quality of the product and the safety. So the process intervention has to be there to reduce the abnormality, so the quality output is at the maximum level. So that's why you get the best product. And before going into what team leader role is then linking to that Toyota way element where you've got that first respect for people and then continuous improvement. So thinking about those values of the lean and the Toyota way that are the well-known principles, what structure from leadership point of view needs to be in place to enable all of those things to happen and ensure the product quality is at the highest level. And that's where the team leader role comes in. So the team leader is managing and overseeing the four on the ratio of 1 to 4 is a role on the production side where managing the team members. So it's an ex-team member. The team leader has the knowledge of what the team member has done. They are trained in all the processes and they dare to support the overall backfilling of the team member's role, but also to Kaizen, standardized work support, the new members training and solving the problems. So they are preventing the reoccurrence of the problems on a daily basis. So if we think about it in terms of like the tree of the organizational chart, the team member is there to perfect the execution of the standardized work. And the team leader is there to eliminate the abnormality. The team leader role is interesting because they are in a leadership role, but they're not directly responsible for the appraisal. So this is something that the supervisor does. So the team leader role is there specifically to support the abnormality and support the members in line with the respect for people and continuous improvement to support the Toyota way and the lean thinking as a whole.
Mhm. So, thank you for that very clear explanation. I know sometimes people struggle with the idea of their managers that don't line manage and their leaders that don't have a leader title. Why do you think that the team leader role is so essential to Toyota?
I think that's it's such an important element because it's needed to prevent those abnormalities and provide that respect for people. So if we take the supervisor has multiple team leaders. So they could have 4 to 6 team leaders managing the overall activities. They are responsible for the HR issues, the appraisals, etc. So it's let's say the role that we know what the supervisor does. The team leader removes all of that. It's not responsible for that element. So it is important because they dare to support that problem solving on a spot and they dare to be responsive to those potential abnormalities that happen there and then. And if you think about, bringing the concept of pulling the and on, so that's where the team member has the power to stop the line to be able to escalate the concern. And that concern is then, let's say there is a scratch on a vehicle or on a product, and the team member notices that, they will pull the hand on escalator to team leader. So the team leader is there next to their team. If the team leader is not is removed from that, it removes potentially that element of fast responsiveness, which is very, very important in that structure.
Thank you so much for that. So I know that a lot of people here come from the software world, and they're familiar with particularly the Agile and Scrum process. So of course, Scrum features a role said to be a servant leader or a true leader, and that's the Scrum Master role. As such, they facilitate and coach developers in software development processes and agile thinking, agile process. They remove obstacles. They work with stakeholders, product, and management to do, this kind of obstacle removal. But they're not themselves technical experts in the work. How do you say this differs from the Toyota team leader role?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, Fortune. And it's really interesting concept because I think as we've been discussing more, I've learned, and I'm not an expert on Scrum or Agile, I'm a former Toyota trained lean. So this is interesting for me to learn and actually see the similarities and differences. And definitely what I pick up on, and from the explanation from the articles, the Scrum Master is the facilitator of the flow, uh,
Hmm.
the workflow, whereas the Toyota team leader or the team leader in a lean organization, they own the stability at the point of work. So they're responsible for managing the team that follow the standardized work to keep the abnormalities to minimum to ensure that there is no product flow out and a perfect handover to the next team. So the Scrum Master will facilitate, they will remove the blockers, they will protect the team from the noise, but the team leader is there to be at the front line and stabilize what's going on with the team. So
Hmm.
they will, as I mentioned in the previous point, they're not managerial, so they don't do the appraisals with the members. They're not responsible for those HR issues. They accountable to support the real-time output and the quality. So they know the work works because they have done the job. They've had to train how to do each of the process to be able to manage that process and then become a team leader. So they would have gone through a training and the team leader development program only after mastering the knowledge of each of the processes for that particular area. So they will coach and they will be responsible to drive the problem prevention. So I understand the Scrum Master, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Fortune, they will help the team to work together. So I would almost in a practical example, it's the similarities to project manager or project coordinator and bringing people from different areas, bringing people together with certain knowledge, but they not particularly might have the exact knowledge of that particular subject. They have excellent skills to bring that flow together. Where the Toyota team leader will keep the system stable so team can succeed consistently. So the pattern is very clear. I think that flow into the system design is very clear. So the team leader will protect the system so the team can succeed consistently. And I think that's the biggest difference that I've noted from my observations and also studying the Scrum and the Agile techniques. Where that differs is that expertise and the abnormality, and also the managerial element and the accountability.
Hmm. I think you understand Scrum and Agile very well, Monica.
Oh, well,
So,
you helped me immensely, Fortune.
so I'd say that from maybe a software point of view, we might call the team leader as more of a technical player coach, more what we would expect from what we would call a TDD coach or an extreme programming kind of player coach. And not all Scrum Masters, of course, as we have already said, have that level of knowledge. I think another thing that really strikes me about the difference between the roles is the 1 to 4, or in some rare occasions, 1 to 6
Yeah.
strict ratio. Nowadays, many Scrum Masters are running 2, 3, and even I've been asked to run 4 teams at once. Um, so, that's very difficult. Based on your experience at Toyota, what would become impossible when this 1 to 4 ratio is stretched?
That's it, and it's a really good example because, of course, the design of the role is there to support the abnormalities management and coach the team to ensure there is no flow out, so everything runs smoothly in a simple terms. So absolutely, the ratio is 1 to 4 to or 1 to 6, depending on the layout and I say the layout and geography of the process design and what's the overall architecture of the system, the potential number, frequency, and the complexity of the problems, but also what's the team member and team leader skill level. So, of course, maybe certain team leaders might have a more experience or the process is less complex, let's say. So there is many variables to consider. But as a general, let's say 1 to 4, that would be a general rule in terms of that ratio. So what happens when that breaks and why it's so important to keep that ratio? I think the first things that will go is coaching. and which is the real-time coaching and the recurrence prevention. And those are the key fundamentals elements to the team leader role. So the ratio makes that um, ability possible and to the role possible. So the team leader will, if they support too many people, the leadership will turn into a coordination, which some similarities from the Scrum Master that we could
Mm.
relate to. However, their role, if you reduce the number of people, is that really one-to-one coaching. So they, if there is that hand-on pull, they dare straight away in terms of solving that issue. And of course, not every issue can be solved straight away. However, that additional support from somebody that's really knowledgeable in that process will be able to help. So, what becomes impossible is that immediate response. So, they can't arrive quickly, which means people that have flagged the problem will find a way to work around the problem or just brush it under the carpet, as we say in the UK. So, it's really important to quickly record it because if you don't record it quickly, you could find you could, and people forget things. You know, it's a normal human nature. It's making sure that we've got there and then the solution and the actual facts of why that happened. Coaching is a really important thing in a Toyota and a lean organization. So when that's removed or the ratio is increased, that coaching can be can become occasional and the standards can fall. So one of the elements for the team leader role is to be responsible for ensuring that the members follow standardized work and that members have the standardized work that's written down, etc., and they know what they're doing. So ensuring that support is there, ensuring that those standards are followed is team leader's role. I also think the leader becomes an admin instead of actual team leader because they
Mhm.
have to deal with many more potential issues and it's only a human nature that we can do so much and I think that's the beauty of the role itself that enables that fast response, that abnormality and that recurrence prevention. So I'd say what to take away from that element is how that ratio, if the ratio stretches, the prevention will disappear. So it doesn't, the design of the system should be there to make sure that it supports the responsibilities, which of course it is difficult and that's why it's such a important subject because not every organization will be exactly the replica of the lean system at the production line. So how that obviously to interpret that, we'll go into that later.
What a great series of insights, Monica. I'm so pleased. You know, one of the things that you mentioned was that quick response and the immediate recording of issues. If someone on a Toyota team pulls the andon because there's an abnormality or a sudden defect, the team leader will arrive within 60 seconds and immediately pitch in to solve the problem. But in software teams, we see that problems are discussed generally daily in a 15-minute meeting, or maybe there's a biweekly retrospective. Uh, and, that has its own issues in terms of, as you say, forgetting what happened, immediate response, restoring quality at that very moment. What kinds of problems does Toyota prevent through this immediate response technique?
Yeah, and it's again a really important point because that's the core a reason why that team leader role is important because you're there to support that reoccurrence prevention and provide fast response. So having that ability to respond immediately preserves the truth. And example of that, it could be very simple. So, for example, if there is a torque problem and you're trying to put a screw in and it doesn't work out, but why is that? You know, is there dust on it? Is there some particles? And if you don't check it straight away, you could just remove it and think, oh, okay, well, that was just one off. But exactly investigating that problem enables you to then see if that could potentially reoccur. And it's all about this problem reoccurrence. It doesn't matter how small it is because they all obviously caused some sort of level of abnormality. And what that does, if you don't have the fast response, is normalizing the workarounds, and people will find ways to make things easier, shorter, etc. And I think that's the thing that I taken away the most, that follow standardized work. And if there is a better way to do standardized work, there is a system to record the standardized work changes that will then be reconfirmed by a team leader, the quality engineer, the assembly engineer, etc. But that fast response, the standardized work, reduces those workarounds that will otherwise be possible, and people do it. As a, in previous point as well, it's a human nature. We like to find ways that we can do things faster, and linking to continuous improvement. But it only works if it's then recorded, and of course, part of the standardized work improvements and a Kaizen improvement. So when the team leader responds with the cycle work, I think there's four elements in terms of why it's important and what they capture. They capture the exact condition. So even if it's like some sort of a string, a dust particle that got in imagine from your top or something, things like this. Sometimes the human reality, when you react straight away and observe the abnormality, you can see, is there some confusion, some hesitation? What's the human response for people that flag the andon? What changed in the overall? So the third point is what changed in the overall setup. Is there any changes in the material, the method, the man machine, so the known four M's? And is there any workaround that became normal for the member? And all of a sudden the standard is not followed because they found a way that it's just easier for them. Imagine you've got two pots in one area, and on the left hand side, the member wants them on the left and right hand side, so they just move it, but that breaks the standardized work. So those little things, they need to be captured as part of the bigger picture. And I think that's a quick response really enables to keep that standardized work knit tight to be able to minimize the abnormalities.
Hmm. And thus give us quality.
Yeah.
So I really like what you said about the team leader's ability to focus on doing root cause analysis for preventions and Kaizen. Whereas, of course, many Scrum Masters, as they run across their multiple teams, are trying just heroically to keep the work process running. And as these workarounds happen, which, in software tends to become what we call tech debt, bugs, defects. In service organizations, it can lead to shortcutting requirements, which can lead to compliance problems. We have a tendency in software to celebrate these heroes who will work late to fix defects, who will end up spending their time fighting fires. And I'm wondering, what do you think is the long-term cost of this kind of culture that we see so often in Agile? This kind of hero culture, this kind of trying to patch things later, this acceptance of technical debt.
It's really important point, Fortune. I think it's interesting to see the difference again between the Scrum and the Agile maybe thinking, as you explained, and that Lean, the team leader role thinking. Because thinking about it, what you described for me, the hero role is a symptom, something that already happened, and you've got to step in and put extra hours in and get people together and fix something. And of course, there are problems that sometimes require those firefighting skills, and those happen in all the organizations, I'd like to think. But the prevention is the leadership in this case. And I think that's why that team leader role is so critical in terms of supporting the reoccurrence prevention and abnormality management. Because the overall leadership and overall thinking is that you will fix the problem so you don't have to do the symptoms management and the hero role. And that's where the focus is to make sure that standardized work is followed and then prevent any reoccurrence, fixing the potential abnormalities, flagging those issues. So the flow and handover to the next person already eliminates all those issues. So in an ideal example of this workflow in a lean environment is that you will not have the hero symptom method. Of course, only on specific examples, as I said, I'm sure every organization has some levels of firefighting going on. And I think the long-term cost is there's multiple things, Fortune. Of course, there's some lo loss of learning. So if the firefighting replaces the prevention, what's the element for the team, for the member, for the specialist to have the opportunity to learn? And who does the firefighting and who's the hero in this case as well? And I think that's something that I've taken away from my time at Toyota is that an ability to learn from the problems and the problem solving techniques that we've learned, which really enables this. I think the instability, which is then normalized, and if the hero, if that hero culture is celebrated, it becomes very normal. So it's then difficult, I can imagine, to go back or to go to the structure where the design of the work has to be around the abnormality. Management and reduction at the beginning instead of then managing as a hero and process that. I think, investment of that standardization in an overall flow management, it does pay off. And I see that in my business at the moment. We do sometimes very simple things, but we take away a process element and breaking it down and standardizing it. And then I let the team run with it. I check in with them as an example, and after 1 week, we'll check in and say, right, how many problems we've had? Is the standard that I've written correct standard, or do I need to change the standard? And we've had some amazing successes with it. We now can see those issues being flagged up early and those issues being raised at the beginning because they already see, okay, that's the expectation, that's the standard that I'm supposed to be following. And I think the one as well, the probably not worth mentioning is then impact on a personal level. It's at the end of the day, it's humans that and people that are managing those things and putting extra hours. And um, I think that respect for people element comes in from the fact that you're trying to resolve those issues early instead of letting people become heroes, which some people like it, but eliminates that even possibility of burnout and impact on a personal level, which is something that should be avoided.
Hmm. I really love your emphasis on how the standard Scrum and Agile culture we see so many places causes a loss of learning and a loss of respect for people. I think it's a very important insight. So, how did Toyota build a system where preventing these kinds of occurrences to ensure quality gets valued over this kind of firefighting?
And that's I think, really important point from the overall system and leadership architecture when it comes to the lean thinking. Because it doesn't start with somebody coming in one day and say, well, we're going to do it like this. No, it doesn't. It's something that been, of course, thought about in terms of systems and minimizing the abnormality level, managing those standardization, and ensuring that process then reduces the flow out, improves the quality. And that's almost the backbone of everything that we're discussing here. But how it's been managed is by making those developments of the people and the opportunities for people to understand the problem solving, feeling part of that problem, a paramount element of how the business is run. And personally, I've had a really good experience of creating and designing various A3 problem solving documents. And oh my God, sometimes they were very painful, and you had to go around and recheck it. And I can still remember the fishbone diagrams that we've had to do and recheck every single element. But everybody on an organization goes through that kind of thinking. And it really teaches you that really detailed problem solving and enables you to understand how other teams operate. But also on the, I'll say the human factor, emotional intelligence is understanding how other teams work and not just with Toyota, with lean organization, it's more and more important in all the organizations is that element to understand how you're emotionally in tune and outwardly thinking to be able to capture those requirements for everything else that's going on in that process. So I wouldn't say it's a one answer, Fortune, to say that's how exactly the leadership is developed. I think it's a long process. And somewhere I heard somebody told me before that it take the first 3 years in a lean organization like Toyota is all about learning. And it is true, the first few years, it's almost like you step in and you think, oh my God, it's so much going on, but you've got to take it in. And that's exactly what I did. And, now being able to transfer that to the role I'm doing and running the operations, it's a very different analysis of that.
Thank you so much. I love that you brought in emotional intelligence. In 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 Agile and Scrum, we talk a lot about psychological safety and emotional intelligence. But a really interesting feature of Toyota is that there is a lot more challenge. And it's challenge in the sense of radical candor. We care about you as a person. We've spent 3 years developing you. You're an important team member. Your job is secure. So,
Mm.
because we respect you as a person and your intelligence, we're going to challenge you. And we don't often get the chance to do that in Scrum and Agile. How would you say that element of psychological safety and challenge plays out in Toyota?
Yeah, no, that's really important, linking from that emotional intelligence factor. I think that's where I'd say that continuous improvement as part of the overall foundation of everything that's done in a Toyota house, the TPS house, as we all know from the principles, really is there and practiced. So from day one, that I think it's instilled that you are able to pull the and on. And that's something that team member on the shop floor, building the vehicles, producing the products in different organizations, you have the ability to stop the production line. You have the ability to stop the process if you do see abnormality. And I think that's empowering for the members, but also that translates to any other role. You've got opportunity to say, look, this doesn't work because of the standards or because of something that, of course, you've noticed. And of course, role by role, this will be different. If you're running a team in the office and a mixture of engineers, etc., that raising that potential abnormality, it looks very different than pulling the hand on and stopping the line. But I think the concept is very similar, and that's where that standardized work exists, and that's where that overall development to be able to raise those concerns and present those concerns in a structured manner to say, I don't think it works because of this. And that's the problem solving that we are, as a team, proposing to put in place. That's exactly the empowering element for the members to learn. And that's something 100% picked up from my development.
That's great. So I'm grateful that you talk about developing people through problem solving, the emphasis on learning that sometimes goes on for years, and which is nowadays perhaps sometimes cut short in software and services by the emphasis of using AI as a fast tech fix instead of taking the time to develop people. Um, so what do you think are the minimum system conditions that we must create in order to start moving towards this team leadership, Kaizen, and continuous improvement culture?
So it's something that, again, we discussed, Fortune, and it's a really
Yes.
important question. Kaizen is at the so when you hear about Lean and Toyota, you think one of the first things that come to your mind is Kaizen. And of course, it's this magic word. And how do we do it? How do we make it successful? But I always say you can only Kaizen something when you've got the standard how to do it. And that process is clear. And then you understand what the abnormality within the process is to be able then to Kaizen what you need to Kaizen to improve the overall output. So those minimum conditions need to be there. As the first, as I mentioned, standards do exist. So it's not something that you come in, everybody's in chaos. People are firefighting, and you throw a magic word and say, right, now we're going to Kaizen, we're going to improve that. I do strongly think this is a very different way of trying to resolve that because what are you trying to Kaizen? There has to be a baseline, and that's where the standardized work existence is very necessary.
Hmm.
I think once you've got visibility of what the problems are, so understanding from the standardized work what the potential issues, abnormalities that occurred, and they're not hidden, it really enables you to then think, okay, what are the next steps to be able to reduce those problems that are visible to us? So we're not hiding issues, we're putting them on a board for everybody to see. Um, the leaders must be present where the work happens, and that's why the team leader role is so important, because they can see the abnormalities. Every single abnormality will be recorded, either fixed straight away, or put with or escalated with a tag, or raised to the management team to be able to action in a structured manner. But the leaders are present, and those meetings, everything is in place to be able to support the members that have escalated those problems and to enable the Kaizen. I'd say the feedback loops need to be fast. And if you escalate a problem and somebody doesn't come back to you for a month, there is a problem with the response time. And let's Kaizen that element. But I think that's where that leadership structure is really important, because then the members feel heard, and they feel like they can raise things because those things are then actioned quickly. And I think for all of us probably in the room here, is nothing more frustrating when you raise a problem and nobody does anything about it, and it takes absolutely ages for somebody to come back to you. And I
Hmm.
think that's where that continuous improvement then it gets stalled, because people get demotivated. And again, it's coming back to that emotional element and the human nature. You want to be heard and you want to feel respected. And this is where that structure does it well for you. Um, and I would say final point is the capacity element. So when with the role, the team leader role that we discussed, it's ensuring that capacity is there and that role is there to enable prevention work. So it's not 100% utilize that member, and that team leader is not working on a production line. That member enables that prevention work so they can support with the abnormality visibility to be able to do Kaizen. So again, it's not one condition, Fortune, that we can say it's must be in place. I think it's those elements on the almost a pathway level that need to be present to be able for you to then to say, right, now is the time we do Kaizen, which is fantastic position to be in, and the continuous improvement is such a strong element.
Thank you so much for pointing out the pathway concept and that we have to build these things plank by plank to get to the point where Kaizen is possible. One of the things that's really fascinating is how even the team leader work and the teamwork, the standardized work, all comes up to that strategy level. And there's this constant understanding of everyone on the team at every level in Toyota of the strategy, their part in it, and they're engaged. How do you think that interaction between the strategy and its deployment and the catchball and feedback happens in Toyota?
I think that's part of the successful element why people do feel part of the team and understand where where my contribution comes in and why it's important. And of course, everybody wants to feel valued. But my experience with Toyota and the lean thinking, but also now putting those practices in place when running my own company, is to make sure that people have a correct level of communication to make sure that you understand why the work that they're doing is important for the next customer, and who's the customer that they are working for. And as a customer, I don't mean the outside the external customer that we sell in the product to. It, the customer could be the next team that will be doing the work after you and fit in the next part for the vehicle, or fit in the next product on the computer, on the speaker, etc. So it's ensuring they do have that instilled, that that customer is very important and who we do it for. And there are many things from daily communication meetings, so morning meetings and morning exercises, and those are well known in a lean world in a Toyota, to overall briefings. So there's team briefings, there are the supervisor briefings, there are overall company briefings. There's an overall structure in terms of the total management that enables the company to include everybody, so everybody gets the same message. And I think that communication where good things and challenging things are communicated really brings the teams together. And that's where the success I've seen, it's not all about singing the praise and glories. It's also to ensure people understand the problems management, for example, and some of the more challenging things like any business would have. It's I think you're very lucky and you're in a business and it all goes smoothly every single month. There is always something. So it's communication at the core. And again, that's something that I translated into the business here is um, bringing people with you on that journey so they understand why we're doing what we're doing, having team meetings, having frequent communication, sharing highs and lows, of course, in a confidential way that will enable people to understand why am I doing what I'm doing is important to my cluster and the business as a whole.
Mhm. That's great. Thank you so much for your time. And I find your answers extremely illuminating, and I hope that our audience has been enjoying them too. So I see our friend Philippe is taking his notes, which is good. I'm very happy to see that. So Philippe, would you like to turn over to a Q&A session? Are you ready for that, Monica?
Absolutely. I hope I'm ready.
Everyone's
We'll
very
see
nice here.
the questions.
And thank you so much. I've been taking like 4 or 5 pages of notes, and it's very interesting how maybe it is that attitude to problems and engaging with problems and abnormalities and so on that but at scale of the company that everything organized around that. It's fascinating how difficult it is. It sounds simple, but how difficult it is to do it.
It's really
Uh,
challenging. Absolutely.
Consistently. So we got quite a few questions here from the audience, and I welcome you to log them. And if I go in order, how is the team leader role managed within Toyota, business division, HR, any other groupings? So I think you mentioned the supervisors. So who manages the team leader in a way?
Yeah, so the team leader role is a specific role that's production related, as we know in a lean team. But the team leader is then managed by group leader. The group leader is managed by section manager. Section manager will have senior manager, then general manager, and then director level. So every role across every division will have similar responsibilities. I think the biggest difference between the office environments and the production environments in the lean organization is that, of course, the work that is performed by team members or specialist office versus production it is different. That's something that helps us to understand, I suppose, transferring that into the other industries as well. But that's the overall structure. So above every team leader, there will be a group leader who are responsible for the appraisal systems, etc., and of course managing as a supervisory role.
And actually, question from me here, is there any element of matrix in Toyota, or is it really the structure of leadership that embodies the specialty together with the managerial element?
I think every area of the business in a lean organization would have the metrics, and of course there will be outputs that they have to be met. So if the production plan is set in the organization, then you will be working as a team to make sure that production plan is met. And that's
Mhm.
the if the quality target is there, the quality target or safety target, of course, zero, then that needs to be met. But overall, then from the overall metrics, there are various business strategy points and discussions that every team or part of the big organization is contributing to. So not just delivering that one output, but also there'll be maybe other factors that need to be done in terms of potential improvements or
Mhm.
standardized work elements or overall member development that still need to be met to ensure that those meet in the overall direction of the business.
Okay, thank you. Um, Other question, and maybe two in a kind of similar vein. Does Toyota apply Kaizen to its own structure? How does this work? And what about Keikaku strategic breakthrough Kaizens?
Yeah, so my experience, of course, as a former employee, is that Kaizen is something that's done almost on a daily basis, and there will be various projects, and I've personally worked on projects that are breakthrough Kaizens, something that's studied, and it's almost a bigger or mini project activities. But the encouragement is to do Kaizens on a daily basis. So, I mentioned about moving a pot where you've got nuts and bolts, for example, or a simple design change within something that's ergonomically or just supports that particular member. Those are the kaizens that are encouraged on a normal based on understanding and improving the standardized work and improving the abnormality or reducing the abnormality as such.
The ergonomics and so on, but on the structure itself, on the organization, design, and so on, I mean, I guess a lot of things are fairly set up, whereas we still sort of finding it our way in the tech world. But is there a sort of organized reflection around, is there a different way of organizing the work um, on the production chain, the sort of production setup, and I mean we've seen it with the lines in the new setup of refurbishing cars as well. It was interesting that
Mm.
how do you evolve from continuous improvement to actually an organization that is repeatable and so on,
And that's
where you have
something
the standards.
Yeah, I understand, Philippe, and it's an important point because you could say, "Oh, I've done the Kaizen and I'm done for the year." It doesn't work like this. I think that's something that it's encouraged, and that's part of the appraisals element as well for the team that you're managing, is to improve the work. And part of the Toyota Way baseline is, as I mentioned, the respect for people is number one, but second is the continuous improvement. So that's something that's a value of the company and communicated across the organization. And by having that ability to pull the hand on and make those changes, people do feel more empowered to propose the new ideas. There's no feeling, let's say, that you'll be scrutinizing for proposing a different way of doing it or say, well, just because you've done that for the last 10 years, it doesn't mean that we have to do it the same way. And my experience has been that, if you've got a good idea, voice the idea because it could improve the process. And sometimes coming in, I'm sure you've heard of this term, you come in and look at something with your fresh pair of eyes and bring in somebody that's um, maybe new to the area, new to the team. You then think, oh, actually, why did we do that for the last 10 years or so? It doesn't work. So I don't think there is one element, Philippe, that we can say will resolve that and say, okay, listen to that, and that's what I'm going to tell you, and that's how you do continuous improvement, and that's how it's going to work in your organization. I think the overall design from the leadership down and from members up, giving those ideas, because it goes both ways, is to be able to create that dialogue. And that's, I think, the most important is to have that dialogue between the management team and obviously the team members who are on the same level in terms of the importance.
Mhm. It's also interesting in what you say here, Monica, that there is an element of hindsight or reflection that goes on as part of this dialogue and as part of this feedback.
Absolutely. And reflection is something that I 100% have taken away from my Toyota days. I go back on processes and recheck those and reconfirm part of every single activity that we do. And I've got team working with me now in the service sector in the construction that, of course, will be alien to some of the Toyota examples that I'm bringing in. And sometimes they look at me and they think, Monica, this is not going to work. I'm like, yes, it will. We're just going to have to stick at it, you know? So it's that reflection element, but also then translating it to what you've got in the workplace that's suitable. Because, I don't necessarily believe in a copy paste activity in this case. I think it's a copy paste and adjust, or copy paste and improve, you could say, where you've got to reflect on the process where that fits in within the whole organization.
And
It's
when
great.
people try and be faster all the time, they don't necessarily stop to reflect.
Oh, we all have absolutely hundreds of things that we've got to achieve, and we want to do those. We want to do a good job, but it's having those systems around you and having the point of call in terms of abnormalities, and the fast response really helps the overall flow of the organization. And you'll see that as a leader. I see that now with smaller team, that those things are in front of me, I can tackle them. If there is something, if there is a delay of material, for example, or if there is a process failure because we didn't reply to an email, as simple as this. Why is that failed? Why that's not on the abnormality board and why we're not trying to improve the process. So I wouldn't say any abnormality is a valid abnormality because that reduces the output that you're striving for.
Hmm. Very interesting. I'll just the errors is actually what puts the whole system in alignment behind it. Yeah. There's an interesting question here around, and we presume you've been born in a Western culture as adopting basically Kaizen, adopting Toyota production system, and which comes more from a Japanese culture. What has been the challenges? And might be our last question, actually, that one.
Absolutely, and of course there are key differences between the collectivism and individualism between the cultures. So for me, besides obviously Toyota experience is a very interesting concept. How do we bring those very much collectivist values and the management techniques to be able to bring it into the individualistic culture where what's the translation technique? And I do think that Toyota has been very successful in that because what's happened is they've taken the standards that have been developed in Japan and really translated those really well in the UK, in the US, in France. And I think that was possible because of those standards approach and putting the structure in place exactly the same in every region. So it's from the leadership point of view, it's exactly the same. Of course, there are differences in product releases and what the customer wants, but that's a separate subject. It's more about that design element, and I think that's where you get the back to values, strip it back to the overall values of why we're doing it and why the people are respected and why the people need to strive for continuous improvement. And I do think that's the magic to what Toyota has managed to achieve. And of course, they're a global organization, they're everywhere, and very, very successful.
What's one of the interesting things that you notice when you go to where we met you, Philippe and I, is Toyota Burniston in Leicestershire. Obviously, British culture has a very different history and industry history than you would see in Japan. And yet, Toyota Burniston is one of the best Toyota plants in the world, and that's why people go here constantly for tours to see what true TPS in its best form looks like. And
Absolutely.
they seem to make it work despite the cultural differences that may at first seem apparent by that element of respect for people. And I just think you cannot emphasize enough how instantiating and making respect for people systemic overcomes what may seem like barriers.
And absolutely, and there's examples across not just obviously in the UK, but across the world, the things that
Hmm.
Toyota have done and managed to overcome some of the big shifts in economy and some of the things that happened, but still managed to sustain a culture at its core in terms of those Toyota way values. So of course, it's a great case study. You know, as I said before, I joined Toyota, I studied it in with a great focus, and of course they've done something really really well.
Well,
That's
yeah, and it's interesting that respect for people is challenging their intelligence. It's not just, excusing issues or performance issues,
No, absolutely,
challenging their intelligence continuously.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us. And I have the feeling I would drain so much knowledge out of you. You must be
We'll
exhausted
need a
now.
coffee break after this.
I wish I could
It's
buy
been
you.
fantastic to talk to you and absolutely valuable for me to learn about the Agile and the Scrum elements as well.
Well, if you have questions for us, feel free to put them and to us. We owe you on this one. You've been wonderful, and Fortune, you've been also a wonderful host, asking really pertinent questions. So thank you both of you for being with us today, and thank you to the people that joined. I think some of them have left now.